Watching movies and jamming out. K-Flix 198.4 Fiction Radio.
Welcome back to K-Flix Fiction Radio, everyone. And I hope you're a fan of glitter, because by the end of today's show, you're going to be covered in it. Isn't that right, Dustin?
Ooh, yeah, that's right. We are looking for ore in the velvet gold mine.
We are mining for velvet.
This is a big film, Shawn. I think we both realized late into the getting ready for this episode that this is a big film. This is a film with references, layers, a whole Citizen Kane connection. There's just a lot going on.
Yes, it's going to be way too much for us to honestly try to even cover everything that takes place in the movie and all of the references and Easter eggs and all of that stuff. So if you're looking for that kind of a in-depth analysis, I don't know if we're going to fully get to the bottom of the gold mine in this one.
Yes. I agreed.
I severely underestimated what kind of a task this one was going to be for me.
It's a lot. Honestly, we're not even going to talk about all the songs. There are just too many.
Yeah, there are so many.
Well, for the time slot we've been given by the station.
Right.
Shawn, if you had to sum up what our dear listeners need, and I stress need, to know about this film in a few sentences, what would you say?
I would say that it's a fictional look at a David Bowie and Iggy Pop type character, and it explores the relationship of those two people in the music business in the 1970s.
Yes, specifically in the setting of the glam rock era. It's pretty harsh on music anywhere outside of glam, actually. They're not too kind to old Bowie in the end, and that may be because when approached about contributing to this film in any way, including his music, he said, "No, mate, that's all right."
Plot aside, the cast for this is astounding.
Oh my gosh. It's a real who's who of who became the it actors.
John Rhys Meyers, Ewan McGregor, Toni Collette. I didn't even know Toni Collette was in this until I saw her face, so that was a pleasant surprise.
Totally.
Christian Bale, Susie Izzard, then known as Eddie Izzard, is fantastic in this movie. So good.
So good. Some of the only straight comedy in an otherwise confusing film full of a lot of feelings.
Yeah, speaking of, this movie is like every movie ever made rolled into one somehow. It has elements from everything in this film.
I feel like I want to interject here that very emphatically, I loved this film. What was clear to me upon completing it was that this director made exactly the movie he set out to make.
And you don't often get the opportunity to do that.
No, and he did it with, I didn't look up the numbers. I don't know what the budget was, but it couldn't have been cheap.
I can tell you what the budget was. It was $9 million.
Wow, that's... I guess, yeah, surprisingly low. It was the 90s. But still, like, every weird decision he wanted to make, who knows whatever goes on. Maybe there was an even weirder, longer director's cut out there, or not out there somewhere. But this thing seems to be true to the vision.
I would agree with that. It is a wholly unique film, and I very much appreciated that. It takes huge swings at almost every turn, and I really enjoyed the roller coaster ride that was Velvet Goldmine.
Yeah, man. You're totally right. It is all of the things in one. Alternating timelines.
You've got a journalistic mystery.
Classic trope, as you pointed out, which, I mean, there's a whole episode of some show there talking about how this is like Citizen Kane. I don't think either of us is well-versed enough or cares enough to make that argument.
No, we're not here for that.
We're here to talk about the music.
And this has a lot of musical elements, though I would not consider this to be a musical movie.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't call it a musical. I don't know what I'd call it, but I wouldn't call it a musical. You're correct. I mean, the film starts with a depiction of Oscar Wilde being delivered to Earth by aliens. And
yes, it does.
Just kind of goes from, there's like an amulet, like all classic films, there's an amulet.
Yeah, you got to have a mystical amulet. Yeah, why not? It gives you some sort of creative powers.
Maybe that's what made Oscar Wilde brilliant. Maybe and maybe somehow he did pass it down to David Bowie, and there's some kind of magic sauce in that thing. Also, by the way, on top of everything else, I'm super impressed that they worked in so much Oscar Wilde writing into the dialogue in this film, and it didn't feel off-putting. It didn't feel, like it didn't belong there.
They used it very, very well, for sure.
It's a love letter to a lot of stuff. this flick.
Certainly is. And the costumes were outrageously fun.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I don't know if you're aware, but it was nominated for an Academy Award for costume design.
Oh, I was not aware, but it's not surprising, and I'm very happy to hear that. You could spend the $9 million on that alone today.
I'm sure quite a bit of the budget was on the costuming for the movie, costuming and set design.
The sets really impressed me. I don't know if they built some cool stuff or just had all these cool locations in their back pocket, but they're all over the place. And the way they like steal shots, like they're like almost these home movie sequences that happen throughout that are just, I think they're really beautiful.
I agree.
So this director, Todd Haynes, has a background in music documentary world, and also went on to make I'm Not There, the sort of Bob Dylan biopic that isn't quite a biopic. And I think this guy's known for riding a line between fact and fiction at this point. He certainly does in this film.
Well, you know, when you find your niche, you sort of stick to it.
Heck yeah. I will take more. Having seen this, I want to see more.
For sure. I haven't seen I'm Not There, but I'm a lot more interested in checking it out now that I've seen Velvet Goldmine.
I'm always wary of biopics because there's a formula, and I'm now willing to bet that I'm Not There does something interesting with that formula. So this movie focuses on a lot of characters, but the three that we're going to talk about on the show are, first of all, the character Brian Slade, played by Jonathan Rhys Meyers. I mean, it's pretty clear pretty quickly, I think, that he's David Bowie.
Oh, certainly.
Without the trademark approval. He's this quirky kid, slides into spacey songs, and then, he's at the forefront of this whole glam rock thing. And at the start of this movie, he's transforming into an alter ego called Maxwell Demon, which is, clearly Ziggy Stardust from Bowie's life. And he's backed by a band, the Venus in Furs, substituting for the Spiders from Mars. Even the onstage assassination plotline that runs throughout this film is a reference to Bowie killing off Ziggy Stardust live on stage at the height of that persona's popularity. To be fair, in real life, there was no controversy or mystery. No one thought that David Bowie had died that night.
Right, yeah.
A different direction than they take in the film. They make it a bigger deal. So this guy, Brian Slade, he is a handful of references beyond just Bowie. First of all, his last name Slade is a reference to the band Slade. His Maxwell Demon alter ego, Maxwell Demon, was actually a band that Brian Eno formed.
I was going to bring that up. I was actually going to mention that to you.
Oh, yeah. Brian Eno, a contemporary of David Bowie, who you have become familiar with through this film. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, he may have some songs that I know, but I didn't go digging super deep into his catalog because, again, this movie was so dense for us to try to tackle that it didn't leave me a lot of room to explore the rest of his catalog. But I'm super into it now, and I'm definitely going to.
Well, Bud, dig in, and like Bowie, you can't just listen to one album and feel like you got a feel for the guy. He has many eras, same as the Starman himself. I do want to real quick say I almost guarantee you've heard at least this one Brian Eno work. You ready for it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hit me with it.
That's the Windows 95 boot up sound.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, it just reminds me of a computer.
Famously, at the time, Microsoft hired Brian Eno at great cost. He made 97 1-second songs, and that's the one that made it all the way to Windows.
Look at how quickly you proved my point that I would know something that he's done. I was just unaware of it. So, bam, that's a dub. That's a win right there.
That's my favorite Eno fun fact.
The other major character in this movie that we're going to talk about is Kurt Wilde, played by Ewan McGregor. And he is basically a mixture of Iggy Pop and Lou Reed. And I love Ewan's performance in this movie. It is completely unhinged and raw and bare, and I was completely blown away by it.
Oh my god, yeah. I mean, peak Ewan McGregor as a guy 2 days off heroin.
Yeah.
I mean, he plays it so well. When he sings, he does it well.
Oh, his singing was
he gives
so
it
good.
Everything.
Oh my God. If I would have seen him do that performance of TVI at the beginning where he just full on presents his dick and balls and asshole to the crowd, I would have been losing my mind. That was so crazy.
Yeah, full on, just full hedonistic performance.
I had no idea that was going to happen. That was like the most joyful jump scare of any movie I've ever seen in my life.
So you mentioned that he's less straightforward than Brian Slade being a Bowie analog. He's kind of a mashup of two American guys. You said Iggy Pop. I think biographically he's from Michigan, same as Iggy Pop.
Right.
Same as Lou Reed. He's got a big, a big substance abuse problem, including heroin, and he also had problems in his childhood. He was sent to shock therapy by his parents to try to, quote unquote, cure his homosexuality.
Quick side note, man, it's so bizarre that shock therapy was a legit thing that actually happened to people. That's so
oh my God,
freaking crazy.
And it wasn't specialized either. It was like a cure-all.
Yeah.
So you've got those two guys. But did you notice in this film that came out in 1998, there's a more recent reference in this character?
And now I have seen the online discourse of people saying that Kurt Cobain also influenced him, but the director and Ewan have both come out and said that that is not the case.
I've said absolutely not.
Yes.
Even in light of...
Now, this was the one scene where I was like, oh my God, he's so fucking Kurt Cobain right here.
Come and take my hand.
I'll have to take the director of the film and the guy who played the character at face value and say they didn't intentionally make him Kurt Cobain-like. But I'm just saying, his name is Kurt. The hair's the same. I guess the style of dress could be Lou Reed. Maybe he was just in the air. He had died 3-4 years before they started making this.
It was in the air. Also, I'm sure Kurt took stuff from Iggy as well. So, doing an Iggy Pop sort of rock star guy, you're going to get the parallels there. And, same with
You're
the
totally
hair.
right.
It's like every blonde skinny guy that sort of sings with a raspy mumble could be compared to Kurt Cobain.
You're 100% right. It's only the hair and the name Kurt that make it feel intentional, but crazy coincidences, I guess.
I agree with the comparison specifically for the song that you played there, because when I watched it in the movie, I was like, whoa, what's going on here?
Well, there's a lot going on in the pot of stew that makes up Kurt Wilde, but he's a hell of a character.
Oh, yeah.
American angst, really.
Yeah.
So the last character I just wanted to mention, and this will be a quicker one, is the character of Jack Ferry, because that one, it's pretty agreed upon, is based on Brian Ferry, same last name, spelled differently, of Roxy Music. And Roxy Music have always been around the same time and places as Bowie. I think in the mainstream, they've gained a lot less recognition. So, it's cool that they're sort of singling out that style. And this movie is also laden with Roxy Music songs.
Before we get into the songs, I did notice when Christian Bale is record shopping that we get 2 album titles for Brian Slade. Those are The Ballad of Maxwell Demon. And then we have Lipstick Traces.
Oh.
And then I also noticed that there was a Kurt Wilde album in the record store, and the title of that was Danger Zone.
Danger Zone, interesting choice.
Yeah.
I think the Loggins camp would have their stamp on that one.
Yeah, I don't know if they signed up on that or not.
Okay, this film is full of songs, and we're only going to have time to talk about some of them. So, by the way, this is the Eno song that starts it all.
This song is great.
It's an awesome song.
Honestly, the beginning of the movie is really cool. It's a good scene.
Hypes you up.
Which fucking band is that? The Flaming Creatures. It's the Flaming Creatures with the members of Placebo running around town with Christian Bale.
So the Placebo songs, they're playing a band in this?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They do the 20th Century Boy cover.
Okay. I was like, I want to talk about that for a second, but then I was like, but that's just a cover. It's not. But yeah, it was played live.
They play 2 songs live. The first song that they play, I have no idea what the fucking song is, because Wikipedia lists the entire thing in order of the songs, right? It's not on there. It's not in the list, and I fucking Shazammed it. Comes up with nothing. I don't know what the fuck the song is.
Wait, not 20th Century Boy? Sorry, I lost you.
I'll play it for you right now because I have a clip of it.
I remember this. I feel like...
Yeah, so Christian Bale is walking into a bar. This is his introduction to the band.
But when the show says
This is the scene after Christian Bale gets kicked out of his house, and then he wanders into the bar, and then he meets these guys. You know, they start talking to him and drinking afterward, and they, you know, ask him a question, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just looking for a room."
Yeah.
But I have no idea what that song is.
So the first song I want to talk about is Hot One in the movie by Brian Slade, our main Bowie-like character. In real life, was written and performed by the band Shudder to Think. Not a band I was super familiar with before this movie.
I am vaguely familiar with them because Craig Wedren is the lead singer of the band.
Okay.
He works with David Wayne a lot, and I've seen him perform live in David Wayne and Ken Marino's middle-aged dad jam band. His voice is just as powerful in person as it is in the two Shudder to Think songs from this soundtrack. He is an amazing talent.
So speaking of David Wayne collabs, I didn't realize Craig Wedren is the guy behind the Higher and Higher song from Wet Hot American Summer.
Absolutely he is, and that's another thing that we can talk about on this show at a later point in time, which is fantastic.
Oh, that made me so happy knowing like this small world that like you know this guy who wrote this song that was such a big part of my discovering like good comedy.
To be fair, I don't know him. I've met him twice, and he is a very nice guy, but I wouldn't say that I know him. I've seen him perform live a couple of times now, and he's just amazing.
I mean, it seems like these guys are pretty well spoken of. They haven't officially made music together since 98, since around the time this film came out. They've done a couple reunions, but I think they're kind of regarded as a band's band. Like, they're well respected by all the other musicians.
Definitely a well-respected band in the rock community.
So this song, Hot One, is kind of a big deal because this movie does a lot of different things with music. The performers in the universe of the film, sometimes the songs they're singing are covers from real glam rock acts. Other times they are brand new music created for this movie. And this is one of the ones that was created for the film.
This song captures the Bowie essence the most for me in the guitar and the cadence of the vocals.
Absolutely in the cadence of the vocals. But yeah, this is some very Ziggy era guitar work going on. So this song, it's been decided online as most likely inspired by David Bowie's song Time. You can hear it in how it plods along the same way.
For sure.
I think they really hit the marks of what they're going for at this early point in David Bowie's glam career, basically. This is him forming the Ziggy Stardust character and transitioning out of the Starman. At the same time, this is a song from the 90s by a band in the 90s, and there are production elements that, as much as they remind me of Bowie, remind me of something like Portishead.
Oh, interesting.
With like maybe 15% Stone Temple Pilots going on in there too. I don't have a clip for that one, but there's just there's a you know, again, we've talked about things being in the air earlier, but yeah, I think it's a banger of a song and a big swing, you know, making a song that's supposed to stand in for some Bowie material.
Spoiler alert, I love both of these Shudder to Think songs. I mean, we'll get to the Ballad of Maxwell Demon later on here in a couple of minutes, but
yep,
big fan of both. The next song we should talk about is 2HB, and it's done by Brian Slade in the movie. It was originally done by Roxy Music in 1972, but the vocals for this were not done by Jonathan Rhys Meyers. They were done by Tom York of Radiohead.
That's true. There's a whole supergroup of English musicians making up the real-life component of the Venus and Furs. We've got Tom York and Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead, Craig McClune from David Gray's backing band, we have Bernard Butler from Suede, and we have Andy McKay from Roxy Music itself.
Hot damn.
So unlike Hot One, this is the first cover song from the real world that in the universe of the movie was written and performed by Brian Slade as he's getting into his Maxwell Demon stage persona.
There are two different versions of this cover in the movie. There's also the Jack Ferry version that we hear at the very end of the movie.
True.
Both of which I don't feel captured the magic and silliness of the original one. Brian Ferry sort of sounds like he's singing as if he's in a Dracula musical, and I find that so charming.
Oh yeah, he's got that like gothic undertone.
was moved by your scream.
Oh, man. I love this guy's voice.
Brian Ferry definitely sips from the same Kool-Aid cup as David Byrne when it comes to vocal intonation.
For sure.
I totally agree with you, and I think I'll always agree with you that the original is the best version of any given song. But I was super impressed by the version we hear in the film, and especially by Tom York's ability to bring his normal vocal register way down below where he lives in Radiohead world. Like, he is mimicking Brian Ferry pretty well here.
Oh, I was moved by your screen dream. Say
This song also made me realize just how much Roxy music probably influenced early Radiohead.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm kind of a minority here. I love guitar-driven Radiohead. I love mid-90s Radiohead. Some of the same stylings in this Radiohead song, although, of course, Tom York is back up in his high register that he sings in for almost all Radiohead stuff.
Destiny, protect me from the world.
The next one I was going to touch on while we're in the Brian Slade Maxwell Demon era is Sebastian. This one is another cover song. It's originally by Kohne Rebel, but in the film it is performed by the same collective of Tom York and co., otherwise known as the Venus in Furs in our universe. But also Jonathan Rhys Meyers sings vocals on this one.
We actually get a little Rhys Meyers action.
We get a little Rhys Meyers action.
And we only get like a really tiny sample of this cover in the movie as well. We don't get a whole lot of this song.
This one kind of seems like a nod to the earlier Bowie stuff, the Starman stuff, the Life on Mars.
Yeah, this song was weird to me because when I listened to the Kohne Rebel version, I thought, oh, I understand why they picked this to be a Bowie-sounding song for the movie. But the performance that Brian does, basically just with the acoustic guitar, I mean, like, there's some keys in there as well, and the scene is a live performance, and he has a full band on stage with him, but the movie version doesn't have those Bowie aspects that the Kohne Rebel song had that made me think, oh, well, this fits in the movie.
I mean, you're totally right. It's a different vibe. Here's a little bit of the Kohne Rebel version. I do think maybe they're trying to make a point about the music that sort of Bowie was leaving behind at this point, which is, it's all very silly. I've said this earlier. This movie tries to make it like there was glam Bowie and then there was Bowie that didn't matter. And that's absolutely not true. Bowie made great music up until almost literally the day he died. So boo to that. But I think that's what they were going for.
I wish that we could have heard the entire song because the original one, the Kohne Rebel version, has a build to it to where the end of it gets more and more fantastical. So it is possible that the live performance would have had that aspect as well, but I don't know because we didn't get to hear it all.
Yeah. Another good point that you just kind of brought up in my mind is I'm having the hardest time picking clips for this episode of the show because as much as this film is dense and has layers and all that, so do all these songs. None of these are like simple verse, chorus, verse things. They all build to somewhere special. And yeah, this is it's a thick stew.
Speaking of that, we might as well just move on to another big old bowl of Brian Slade stew with the Ballad of Maxwell Demon. We're circling back to Shudder to Think.
That's right. Another original song for the soundtrack. Here's a bit of it.
Now, this song, I think, has a lot more musical qualities than the last one. Like, this one feels to me, outside of the Bowie influence, feels like it had a lot of Jesus Christ Superstar and, like, Godspell, those 70s rock opera musicals. I really feel that in this song.
I'm there with you, and I wonder if that's because Craig has, like, a sort of Tiny Tim-esque quality to his vocals in this. Do you know what I'm talking about?
But at the same time, it's still so powerful.
Yeah, not saying that's a bad thing, but it takes me back to the wonderland of music more.
Right.
All in all, it's just this is a glam rock piece. So this one, they say, they online say, is a reference to Bowie's All the Young Dudes, which I can hear it.
I can hear it. This one tonally is a little bit more tame than the Ballad of Maxwell Demon.
Definitely. actually, I will say if you listen to the Mott the Hoople version of that song, which they released this, even though Bowie wrote it, they released it before he did. Yeah, the Mott the Hoople version, it's a little more up-tempo. It's a little closer to what the Shudder to Think guys may have been basing this on, if indeed the internet's correct, and that is the direct inspiration for this song. It is at once very Bowie, and again, I get a sense of that 90s thing. Like, I don't feel like we're too far from Jane's Addiction style guitars.
Okay.
There's a cleanliness to the crunch, if that makes sense. It's still, I think if you just came up to me on the street and played that song and I'd not heard it, I could place it as having been written in the 90s, recorded in the 90s. Maybe is a better thing to say.
Yeah, I don't know that I could have done that.
In any case, it's a great song.
Oh, super great. Love this song.
We gotta keep this train moving. I've got one more Brian Slade song I was going to talk about. Any interest in The Whole Shebang?
Oh, hey, that's a good song. I liked that song.
So The Whole Shebang is another original song for this film, but this one not written and performed by any of the cats we've heard from before. This one's by Grant Lee Buffalo. I really like this track, and I think it stands out as maybe like the glammiest thing on this soundtrack. It really captures what it's going for.
The piano is what really sells this song for me. I love
for sure.
the piano.
Absolutely. It's like, yeah, it's that whole like chamber, like you got 20 people in a tiny room putting on a show.
It's also a thing where it feels like when the chorus hits for most of these songs, that's where the Bowie essence really shoots out of it.
That's where they really turn it on, really open up the spigot of Bowie juices. One other quick thing about that song. Did you notice in the beginning this little guitar bit?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
I was like, I've heard that somewhere before, haven't I?
Oh, yeah.
There's a very similar ladder down guitar structure in Pink Floyd's Echoes, which of course was famously ripped off, they say, by Andrew Lloyd Webber. That little riff gets around.
All right, well, my temperature's getting a little hot here, Dustin, so I feel like I gotta talk about my final Brian Slade song, which was Baby's on Fire.
Baby's on Fire.
Yeah, and that was originally a Brian Eno song, but in the movie, it's done by the supergroup The Venus and Furs. And when the song first started, all I could think about was a different song. That's right, baby. D and word. Yeah.
You love a good outcast rap group from any country. These guys and Little Big.
Yeah, I got a niche, baby. I need it. But in all seriousness, the usage of this song in the movie is fantastic. This is my second favorite scene in the movie. The guitar blowjob, which David Bowie actually did in real life, is so fucking good. Yeah. There are pictures of it. It's so awesome. He did it to his guitarist, Mick Ronson. So in the movie, while the blowjob on the guitar is happening, I'm like, oh my God, this guitar solo is so sick. Then flash forward, after I finished the movie, I listened to the Brian Eno version, and I'm blown away to discover that more than half the fucking song is a guitar solo. It's like a 4.5 minute guitar solo. There's only singing at the beginning and at the tail end of the song, and it just is wailing for the rest of the time. It's awesome.
So Brian Eno was very involved in sort of the krautrock scene, which was experimental music in Germany in the early 70s. And I think the most mainstream thing to come out of krautrock as a scene is the way action movies were scored later in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
To me, that's got all the feel, that guitar clip you just played there.
Oh, for sure.
Like, you can totally see somebody hanging over like a vat of acid trying to escape to that guitar solo.
100%. It's very in line with like what Clapton did for the Lethal Weapon soundtrack.
Oh, really? I didn't know he actually did any soundtracks.
But yeah, I thought that the cover of this in the movie was awesome. Again, love the scene. The visual connection that my brain has to the song now is very vivid and super powerful.
Man, I just love that at every step you're getting more and more into Eno. It just makes me happy.
Yeah, well, I love a good guitar solo. So when I saw the one in the movie, I was like, well, got to be a pretty good guitar solo in the song. I didn't know I was going to get a fucking 4-minute ear blow.
You guys offer a 4-minute ear blow? This establishment.
All right, so we covered the Brian Slade. Dustin, you want to cover some Kurt Wilde tunes? Let's talk about Kurt Wilde.
Ooh, okay, Kurt Wilde. So Kurt Wilde, at least for the first song we see him perform, TVI, it's a little more of a sane, direct line from inspiration to movie portrayal, because TVI is, of course, a song by Iggy Pop and the Stooges.
Yeah, we got a direct line with this one.
That said, much like with the Venus and Furs, a collective of British musicians who play all of Brian Slade's backup music, Kurt Wilde has his own band, the Wild Rats. That's with 3 T's.
And a Z.
They went all in on this. So the Wild Rats, in real life, in our world, are made up of, this time, some well-known American musicians.
Ooh.
We've got Thurston Moore and Steve Shelley from Sonic Youth. We've got Mike Watt from Minutemen, Don Fleming of Gumball, and Mark Arm of Mudhoney. And then rounding it all out, we've got the Stooges' own Ron Ashton.
Hot damn.
Kind of much like, I think, Roxy Music serves as the base for Brian Slade's discography in the film. They say Kurt Wilde is, half Iggy Pop, half
Lou Reed.
They very much favor the Iggy Pop side.
I would agree with that.
This one, TVI, I don't have a ton to say about the music because the music is a pretty faithful cover. The standout thing here is that Ewan McGregor brings his own vocals for this, and
honestly, he kills it. Yeah. He's so good. From the second he starts screaming in that movie, I understand why Brian Slade stopped walking and looked at the stage, because I would have done the exact same thing.
Kurt Wilde. The way he comes in.
And I love the shot of Brian Slade's former manager too, that extreme close up of his face. Kurt Wilde. Kurt Wilde did another Stooges cover for this soundtrack. He did a cover of Give Me Danger, but this one is done by the Venus and Furs.
Indeed. Yes, just to keep us on our toes. That's right, we now have Brian Slade's British real-life backing band playing songs that take the place of the Stooges in Kurt Wilde's American backing band.
The ending of this song is where the cover really gets me, though, because of Ewan's vocals and him just going full out. Yeah. Like I can feel it. I literally can feel it.
Yeah, that's a man ripping his throat out. That's a guy who's not going to be able to talk tomorrow.
That, again, is another pretty straightforward cover from the Stooges' original version.
But that's all they needed. They didn't have to do all this trickery to make it look like 4 people at least were singing one person's songs, which is what it takes to imitate David Bowie, apparently. But yeah, on the Kurt Wilde side, it was more 1 for 1.
And once again, rad song. I really like the way that Kurt Wilde performs music in this movie.
It's so cool, the dueling styles too. You're getting a lot more of that straight rock and roll punk influence stuff from the American side, and then the more artsy, spacey Bowie stuff from the British side, but they're feeding off each other throughout the movie. That's the other thing this movie is about, is New York and London were both hotbeds for the music industry, and you weren't shit if you weren't in both places.
So Jack Ferry, Brian Slade, and Kurt Wilde are not the only fictional musicians in this movie. We still have a couple more to talk about, one of them being Pauly Small, a band totally ripping it up to Personality Crisis, which is originally by the New York Dolls, but in the movie was done by Teenage Fan Club and Donna Matthews.
Please tell me you have a clip of this.
You bet I do. This is a great cover, by the way. I love Donna's raspy, raw vocals.
I wanted to say essentially the same thing. This is a song that you better have your shit in order if you dare cover it, because the original is 99.999% on energy and fun and just throat-ripping goodness. And they rose to the challenge.
When this came on, it was like I got punched in the mouth in comparison to a lot of the songs in this movie. I was thrilled with this cover.
This song might have been the first one where I really appreciated taking to heart the suggestion at the top of the film to play it at maximum volume.
Yes, absolutely.
Which, by the way, on Ziggy Stardust, the album is a similar suggestion to play at maximum volume.
But yeah, you did not lie a second ago when you were talking about the original version of this, because from the second David Johansen screams at the beginning of the song, you know you are in for a very fun ride. Yeah, man, I am ready for fun now.
Hell yeah. Likewise, man, when that song was playing in the club and that band was playing it, I was full in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the song rips. The original one is so good. The cover, great cover. Again, Donna Matthews and those vocals. I love a raspy voice in my rock songs, and that was just so choice.
Speaking of covers that rip, of songs that rip, that you, again, better do a good version of, let me just play a little of one of my favorite songs of all time, probably 20th Century Boy by T-Rex.
Yeah, this song is so good. From the jump, you're like, oh, I'm about to have a lot of fun right now.
Because that guitar tone, I mean, many have tried, no one can match it. But you know who comes pretty close? Is Placebo as the flaming creatures in this film.
The thing that really works for me is the vocals from Brian Molko. His vocals work so well with this song.
Placebo, a band that I'm aware of, but they've never been big on my radar. I kind of want to listen to more Placebo.
Yeah, I really only know a couple of songs by Placebo. I'm not super familiar with their entire catalog, but the two songs that they do in this movie as the Flaming Creatures, pretty darn good. The only thing that the Placebo version really lost in my mind was the horns at the end of the song.
Yeah, they keep chopping out the horns.
And that's a bummer, man, because, you know me. You've known me for a long time. I love the horns.
Ooh, yeah, third wave ska. Mm-hmm. Well, that's sad. That is a sad fact. But all in all, marks are pretty high on all the recordings on this.
Speaking of, if any of these fictional acts were to be real in our existence, would you be a fan of any of them? Would you check them out?
Oh, this is such an easy one. You ask me this question every episode, and sometimes I have to rationalize or justify and go, maybe under these certain circumstances, I might, 100% every band I would be totally into. Yes.
All right. Yeah.
This is my kind of shit. This is good rock and roll music.
Even the second coming of Brian Slade, Tommy Stone.
Ooh, Tommy Stone. Yeah, Tommy Stone is the big jab that I which paints 80s David Bowie as a Reagan voting capitalist man of stone, which is, I think, pretty unfair and pretty inaccurate. I don't know if that's just in service to some bigger anti-capitalist story, a warning about all the terrible shit that did happen starting in the 80s, or if it's a dig because Bowie said, no, you can't use my music.
Right.
I'd give Tommy a shot.
All right. Fair enough. No surprise here. I would be super into Kurt Wilde.
Yeah, Kurt Wilde's your guy.
Kurt Wilde's my guy, but I would be super into the Flaming Creatures too if I heard their version of 20th Century Boy. I would check out Brian Slade, but in a world where I already had David Bowie, I would still enjoy the song The Ballad of Maxwell Demon and Hot One for certain, because those songs are certified bangers. I would still love those two. So I don't know that I would be a big fan of the entire catalog, but I would give it a go.
Yeah.
And Polly Small, I would be for sure into. The only one that I think that I wouldn't be into is Jack Ferry, but that's only because out of the two versions of 2HB that we get in this movie, this is my least favorite one. So I would have leaned Brian Slade on that over Jack Ferry personally.
That's fair. They don't Jack Ferry they use visually a lot more than the actual sound of the music.
Right, exactly.
So it's a harder one to judge, but I'd like to think Jack Ferry had some good stuff.
Oh, it's totally possible. I'm just judging on the one song that I get from Jack in this and me liking the Brian Slade version more.
Well, Shawn, what a weird, wild, and strange ride this film has been. I watched it once and remained thoroughly confused and ready to see it more times. You've seen it twice, and I bet there's more to find still in this here Velvet Goldmine.
And with that, we're going to bid you adieu, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for tuning in to 198.4 K-Flix Fiction Radio.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Watching movies and jamming out. K-Flix 198.4 Fiction Radio.